When balance was restored, life did not remain hushed. It opened outward, spilling into the streets in music, color, and scent. Festivals were the great reminders that the gods were not only watchers of order, but neighbors, companions, partners in joy. If a person had felt the weight of displeasure, of imbalance corrected, then to step into a festival was to step back into belonging, surrounded by laughter and song. Processions were the heart of these moments. Imagine the great bark of a god, a glided shrine carried on the shoulders of priests, swaying slightly as it moved through the city streets. The air rung with sistrums, rattling in steady rhythm, and drums that kept the crowd's pace. Incense burned thickly, carried in small braziers, its smoke rising in fragrant clouds that clung to hair and linen. The smell was sweet, resinous, almost tangible, and it told everyone present, this is sacred space, even here in the streets. For the ordinary person, participation was not distant. Hands reached out to scatter petals, to wave palm fronds, to raise voices in hymns that everyone knew by heart. Children laughed as they ran alongside the procession, their bare feet kicking up dust, their voices high and clear. Vendors appeared with trays of figs and dates, with jars of beer that foamed when opened. Joy was not separate from worship. It was part of it. To delight in food, music, and laughter was to honor the gods who gave them. After a misstep, after a ritual of repair, joining such a festival was more than celebration. It was reintegration. The person who had whispered their confession, who had laid bread on a shrine, or poured beer onto the earth, could now raise their voice with everyone else. There was no mark left upon them, no reminder of this harmony. The gods had accepted the offering. The balance was set right, and now the community welcomed them back fully. The Egyptians saw their gods not as distant tyrants, but as beings who shared their lives. Hathor, goddess of joy, music, and love, was celebrated with songs and dancing. Bastet was honored with processions of cats adorned with ribbons, their presence both playful and sacred. Osiris, Lord of Renewal, was remembered with mourning that gave way to feasting, sorrow that turned to gratitude. Each festival was different, but all carried the same rhythm, remembrance, offering, joy. The color of it all mattered. White linen washed clean for the occasion, painted faces, cold eyes catching the sunlight, banners of bright cloth fluttering in the breeze, statues adorned with flowers, their petals vivid against carved stone. Even the river itself joined, barges decorated, oars dipping in unison as hymns floated across the water. To be in the midst of it was to feel that the gods were not above, not beyond, but here, smiling in the laughter of children, glowing in the oil lamps that lined the streets, savoring the bread and beer alongside their people. And in those hours, the idea of divine anger seemed distant, not because it was forgotten, but because it was understood as part of a larger rhythm. A god displeased could be appeased, a misstep could be corrected. What mattered was the return to balance, and festivals embodied that return with abundance. Music replaced silence, shared bread replaced withheld offerings, joy replaced unease. The world, for a day, felt whole again. At night, when the processions ended, the barge returned to the temple, and the crowds thinned. The scent of incense still lingered in the air. The streets were quieter, but the memory of joy remained. People carried it home like a blessing, in their hair, in their clothing, in their voices hoarse from singing. It was a reminder that the gods were near, not only in correction but in celebration. But the festivals ended, and the rhythm of ordinary days returned. How then did the people carry balance forward after the music faded, after the incense drifted away? The answer lay in personal practices, small rules, gratitude, quiet corrections, the daily weaving of Ma'at into life. That is where we end, with the art of carrying balance forward, one gentle gesture at a time. When the festival lights faded, when the barkeys were returned to their sanctuaries and the music drifted away into memory, life settled again into its quieter rhythms. But the Egyptians did not see this as a less sacred time. If anything, these ordinary days mattered more, for it was here, in the small gestures, in the daily courtesies, that balance was truly maintained. To live in Ma'at was not to wait for festivals, nor to fear missteps constantly. It was to weave balance into the fabric of each day, thread by thread, so that when disorder arose, it could be recognized quickly, corrected gently, and left behind without bitterness. The Egyptians believed this was the real work of life, to keep the scales steady, to honor truth and measure not with grand offerings alone, but with ordinary acts. A man walking at dawn might pour a small libation of water onto the ground before drinking, acknowledging that his own thirst was only one among many. To earth, the river, the gods all needed their share. A woman lighting a lamp at dusk might whisper a prayer of thanks for the day's bread, her words curling into the smoke like a note carried upward. Children were taught to greet chimes with bows, to speak carefully, to treat animals with gentleness. None of these gestures took long, none cost much, yet each was a stitch in the fabric of Ma'at, a way of carrying balance forward. And when imbalance happened again, as it always did, the memory of past rituals guided the response. A forgotten offering could be replaced the next morning. A sharp word could be softened with an apology, and a small loaf of bread placed on a shrine. A broken oath could be confessed, corrected, and set right with a gift of beer or incense. These were not enormous burdens. They were reminders that the balance was ongoing, not final. Life was not a test passed once, but a practice repeated daily. There was gratitude too, not only after corrections, but woven into the rhythm of life. Farmers gave thanks for the Nile's flood, merchants for safe journeys, mothers for children's health. Gratitude was not a luxury, but a duty, a way of acknowledging that the harmony of existence was fragile and precious. To say thank you was to strengthen the bond, to keep the gods near, to affirm that the world was still aligned. Communities carried this together. Neighbors help each other keep balance, reminding one another of taboos, sharing food to complete offerings, standing as witnesses when oaths were made or corrected. Balance was never just personal, it was social, stretching across families and households, through the villages and temples. A person in harmony contributed to the harmony of all. One out of step could unsettle others. So, everyone had reason to help each other carry balance forward. Even solitude was not empty. To sit beneath the stars of night, to look up at Orion's belt or Sirius rising, was itself a lesson. The stars kept their courses. The river rose and fell. The sun returned each dawn. To see this order was to remember the greater Ma'at, the balance larger than any human. It gave perspective. One mistake was not the end of the world, but one act of repair, one whisper of prayer, one shared loaf could align the small human life with the vast harmony of sky and earth. The Egyptians saw gods not as cruel taskmasters, but as companions who wanted balance to be kept. If a god was angered, it was not because they sought to destroy, but because imbalance tugged at the fabric of Ma'at. And when a person made amends, the god was satisfied not by punishment, but by restoration. This was the rhythm: offense, sign, repair, gratitude, belonging. A cycle not of fear, but of care. So, what if you angered a god in ancient Egypt? You would not be struck down. You would not be banished forever. You would be nudged, reminded, unsettled by dreams, by omens, by the quiet signals that told you something was out of balance. You would notice, or someone close to you would, and then you would act. You might light a lamp, pour water, set down bread or beer. You might whisper into incense smoke, "I have forgotten, and now I remember." You might call neighbors to witness an apology, or visit the priest for purification. And when you had done this, you would speak the closing words. It is restored, short, steady, final. From there, life flowed back into belonging. Festivals awaited with music and joy. Daily rhythms resumed, with gestures of gratitude and care. The gods were not distant tyrants. They were woven into life itself, close as the lamp flame, near as the river's flood, attentive as the stars above. To anger a god was to fall out of step. To make right was to find the rhythm again. And to carry balance forward was the work of every day, lighting candles, offering loaves, speaking truth, showing gratitude, weaving Ma'at into every word and gesture. Suppose you broke a rule you didn't know was sacred. In Egypt, that was never the end. It was an invitation to listen more closely, to correct with care, and to return to the harmony that bound gods, people, and the world together. Because in the end, the Egyptians knew a single candle, a loaf, and a whispered name were enough to set a life straight again.